Teal dear, Soundlyawake does not understand quite a wide variety of topics, but I think the thing that bothers me most is his total lack of understanding of A, history, and B, the etymology of certain words, but we shall see why.
So I was reading comments on one of my videos on my Nicola Foti channel, which is a beauty channel, and some of you may be saying, why do you have a beauty channel? You're a boy. And that's the exact point of this video.
Unfortunately, not everyone can understand and appreciate just how fabulous you are, darling.
So, these are the comments. Why? Why do boys call other boys girls when maybe they're not as strong as the other boys, or they're doing something feminine?
That's probably to do with the fact that we are a sexually dimorphic species, in which the males are generally stronger than the females. So when you compare a male's strength to a female's strength, you are actually using a general, objectively provable difference. Sure, it's a bit of a dick move to the females, but that doesn't stop it being scientifically, on average, true.
And why is that an insult?
It's not. You're simply comparing the average male benchmark and comparing it to the average female benchmark, which will on average be lower. It's not an insult if it is objectively true.
Does being a girl make you less of a person?
No. Again, objective proof.
Are girls just inferior jokes?
No. Again, objective proof.
And it's not just the boys. Girls use it too. So please stop. Stop perpetuating your own discrimination.
I like how you're conveniently ignoring the fact that girls and women will often use the term boy or man to insult other girls or women as well, and that both genders will use the term boy to insult a man, yet the term girl will not always be used to insult a woman, but we'll get onto that later.
Would you let your son play with dolls?
Did you miss all of this?
Action Man! And his transport command. Tough, realistic models specially designed for Action Man. They're all action. Just look for the Action Man Transport Command badge.
Now that happened in the 80s, and is still going today, and is a licensed copy of G.I. Joe. Now I know a lot of people like to try and differentiate dolls from action figures, and no matter how many ways you try and do it, they're basically the same thing because it's still a child manipulating a smaller representation of a human. The entire concept of the action figure is boys playing with dolls. And it's been happening for quite a few decades now.
Or your daughter play with toy trucks.
Yeah, that exists as well. I suppose this also gives me a fantastic chance to use this image because I think it's hilarious and adorable.
Would you let your son wear a pink shirt if he wanted to?
Sure, why not? Again, this is another thing that actually is quite common, yet you still seem to be making it out like it's something that never happens.
Or get your daughter a football?
Yes, that is also something that happens.
And if you said no, why not?
Because some parents are overly controlling assholes, trying to force their kids to do well at something that they don't want to do, or indeed trying to live vicariously through their children to realize their own failed dreams of glory.
Because kids at school might make fun of them? Because they're not adhering to societal gender roles?
Well, as a parent, you do have a duty of care to your child, and you have to accept that we do live in an imperfect world where different people will raise their children with different standards to your own. And as a parent, it is important that you instill that knowledge in your child. By all means, tell your son that if he wants to prance around in a tutu all day, that is absolutely fine. Or tell your daughter that if she wants to run around with a sword and shield and pretend that she's Conan, that is also fine. But they need to be aware that everyone else in their peer group will not necessarily appreciate that behavior, and that there may be negative repercussions for displaying such behavior. This is simply teaching your child that certain types of behavior are not always appropriate in certain environments. It's no different from telling someone that a Hawaiian shirt and sandals is probably not appropriate attire to wear to a funeral. Sure, societal expectation sucks, but that doesn't mean that you can be totally inconsiderate of other people.
Maybe as parents we should start educating our children otherwise. It's been almost a century since, at least in the United States, the women's suffrage movement succeeded in passing the 19th Amendment so that they could vote.
And yet there is ample historical evidence showing that women were voting before then. So you might want to look into that before you make a totally incorrect assertion. And if you want to go back even further, I would point out to you that there were certain Native American tribes in which women had the right to voice, which is basically voting, which is long before the European institution of voting in election came to America. But you go on right ahead and totally ignore the marginalized Native American population, you oppressive shitlord.
Something I learned while looking up the exact date is that Mississippi didn't ratify this amendment until 1984. That's the year I was born. That's crazy.
It's also largely irrelevant. By my understanding of the American ratification system, in order for something to become part of the Constitution, it only needs to be voted on by either 2/3 or 3/4 of all of the states of the Union. I'm not entirely sure which one of those is correct. It may very well have changed from one to the other, or there may be different amounts required for different types of law. I'm not entirely sure. However, this fact is why you will notice the last vote for ratification that actually mattered was the vote for Tennessee in 1920, at which point the 19th Amendment became part of the Constitution and would have to be obeyed by all states of the Union, and that therefore the ratification of any state after 1920 was actually irrelevant and was largely ceremonial. However, I may be wrong with this because American law is not a strong point of mine, so if I have made an error in this section, there will be annotations on the screen correcting any mistakes.
Mississippi is widely considered the most religious state, so it seems that they were just following orders. In the first book of Timothy in the Bible, it says, "I do not permit a woman to teach or to have authority over a man. She must be silent." Of course, not everybody follows that Bible verse, but it's in there, and the elected officials in Mississippi at the time obviously did, so that's all it took to oppress an entire group of people.
And this is why religion needs to be expunged from humanity.
On the flip side, I saw Hal Sparks talking about how you need the balls to do something, but in reality the testicles are the weakest part of a man. And do you really need them to be able to do something? Since only men have balls, it suggests that girls will never be good enough to do things that men do.
You seem to have entirely missed the point of the metaphor. One of the functions of the testicles in the human body is to produce a hormone called testosterone, and numerous studies have shown that testosterone can be linked to increased risk-taking behavior. So when the metaphor "grow some balls" is used in regards to encouraging someone to do something, you are implying to them, or outright telling them, that they need to engage in risk-taking behavior, and that you are actively encouraging them to do so. You are actively encouraging them to step outside their comfort zone and to take a risk. And the reason that this metaphor is used is once again down to the sexual dimorphism of our species. It is rooted in our biology.
Why not let your daughter dream of being a firefighter?
There is absolutely no reason at all why you should not encourage your daughter to be a firefighter. But women and men need to be aware of their physiological differences, especially in regards to physically engaging and demanding jobs such as military, law enforcement, and firefighting. And I am now going to play for you a short video clip which is going to demonstrate those differences very markedly.
The term firefighter was coined to create the illusion that women are of the same standard and do the same job as men in the fire service. This woman on the game show Fort Boyard is a firefighter.
I hope they've taught you how to knock down doors.
Definitely.
In you go.
Oh no! This is tough.
As high as you can. Yeah. As high as you can. As high as you can.
Take a bigger run up. She's a hard lady.
Go on, Jane. Remember the elbow. Big run, as fast as you can.
That's
and high.
Go for it.
High.
Oh.
High.
Really? So close.
As fast as you can. Well done.
Yeah, oh. Come out.
Come out.
That was such a great effort.
Okay.
Yeah, I think just 2 more throws and you would have been there, but that's tough for you.
A man with no firefighter training has no trouble with the same task.
It's a bit of an ouchy one, I think. Be aiming higher, that's it.
As I said, don't discourage women from taking these jobs. They just need to be aware of their physical limitations and differences to men when someone else's life is on the line.
And similarly, why not let your son join the ballet if he wants to dance?
because the threshold for being a ballet dancer is significantly lower than the standards required to be part of the military, law enforcement, or firefighting services. Also, if you suck at being a ballet dancer, chances are you're not going to get someone else killed.
This just proves to me that women still aren't considered equals, as much as our society may have progressed, and as much as we, as a global culture, think we may have.
We already have equality under the law. What you now seem to be demanding is equality of biology, which is impossible. And
it also appears that women's struggle is pretty close to the gay struggle.
I've never heard of anyone being historically executed for the crime of being a woman.
Aside from those who use religion to oppress gay people, there are others who just think gay men are feminine, which apparently is a negative quality, and that, gay people don't exactly fit into gender role norms. And so they see them as less than men. What is less than man? Is man the top of the totem pole? I mean, just because you're a straight white male, that makes you better than a gay black female? This I don't understand.
That's because it doesn't make sense, which is why most people do not think like that. The very fact that you cannot provide any evidence that this is how society thinks kind of proves to me that what you are saying is simply an assertion.
And even within the gay community, there are masculine gays who think they're better than more effeminate gays just because they're closer to society's ideal. I've known gay men who've acted feminine since they were little. Do you think they were just jumping on a trampoline one day and actively thought, hey, I'm going to start moving more fluidly like girls do, and maybe I'll change my voice so it's higher somehow?
For someone who's complaining about gender norms and sexual dimorphism within our species, you have just demonstrated the fact that you actually support both of those things, because you have by default applied this term of grace and fluidity to females, not males. You have just asserted a universal truth on one entire half of our species, in the same video in which you complain about other people doing just that. So I suppose I can just put this image on the screen and leave it at that.
No, that's just how they are. And what's wrong with that? And what's wrong with tomboys and girls that tend to like boy things? I'm pretty sure you know my answer. It's nothing. Nothing's wrong with it.
And the overwhelming majority of people agree with you, which is why, even though you are asserting that everyone disagrees with you, you can't show any examples of people actually disagreeing with you. And you certainly can't show that they disagree with you on a wider societal level.
And guess what? Your genitalia doesn't necessarily determine what gender you are. Surprise, there are transgender people in the world who may have been born with a penis, but psychologically in every other way possible, they're female. And likewise, there are people who are born with a vagina who have an internal sense of being male. This isn't weird. It's nature.
Actually, it is weird. And I don't mean that in a bad way. The very fact that we have concepts of things such as heteronormalacy kind of proves that things like homosexuality, lesbianism, transgenderism are not the normal for our species, which is why people who fall into these demographic groups are such a small minority of the population, with people who identify as homosexual being less than about 3% of the population, and people who identify as transgendered being about 1% of the population. Now again, I'm not saying that these people are abnormal in a bad way, but they are certainly not the norm for the species. They are not what would be traditionally expected. To put it into mathematical terms, if you have a bag, and inside that bag is 100 blocks, and 95 of those blocks are red, and 5 of them are blue. If you reach into that bag and pull out 10 blocks at random, the odds of you getting all red blocks are statistically higher than you getting all 5 blue blocks and 5 red blocks. So it would be entirely reasonable of you to say that every time you remove 10 blocks from the bag, that the normal expectation would be 10 red blocks, or 9 red blocks and 1 blue block. Now, even though people who are homosexual or who are transgendered or are any part of these smaller groups, that gives us absolutely no right to marginalize those people or to treat them any differently from anyone else, because first and foremost, they are a human being. And the reason that I say it's important for people from these smaller sects of society, especially transgender people, to come to terms with the fact that what they experience is unusual, is because by telling them that they are entirely normal and like everyone else is lying to them. It's important for them to come to terms with the fact that they are going to meet people who have no idea who they are and what their situation is.
You have no right to discriminate against these people. What, just because you have a penis and you feel like you should have a penis, so, you know, you're better? And yes, I said penis and vagina. They're not bad words. They're body parts.
Penis and vagina.
I'm a feminist because I'm sick of the word girl being an insult. And I'm tired of pink not being a boy's color.
Okay, time for a history lesson. Throughout most of human history, pink has not been a girl's colour, and has been in no way associated with the feminine. In fact, pink used to be a masculine colour. The reason for this is because red was always considered to be a masculine colour, and pink was therefore a colour ascribed to boys, because boys were obviously considered to just be small men. Which is why we have images like this from 100 years ago, of Queen Victoria with Prince Arthur, and as you will notice, Prince Arthur is covered in pink. And this image of an American schoolboy, again from the same century, and you will notice he is wearing pink. Now, the reasons for colour significance is actually tied to textile history and technology, so I'm going to give you a brief rundown here. Most clothing has historically been made out of wool, cotton, silk, and hemp, which is why most clothing has been coloured white, cream, beige, or brown throughout history, in regards to fabric. Obviously, we've also made use of leathers as well. Now, if you wanted to colour any of those fabrics, you would have to use natural colourants. And the problem with a lot of natural colourants, such as dyes extracted from crushed insects or from plants, would be that they would eventually wash out. They would fade very, very quickly. And then we roll around to the mid-1900s, when we begin inventing artificial fabrics and artificial dyes. We also invent new and different soaps and detergents, so we have better ways of washing clothes that are less damaging to the fabric and the dye within. Which is why, when you start looking at the mid-1900s, that's when you start seeing mass-produced, multicoloured clothes hitting the market. And these clothes are mass-produced and readily available. Now, enter the women's rights movement and feminists. These feminists are of an age where they remember pink being a boy's colour, and so we start seeing feminists grabbing hold of this boy's colour, appropriating it for their own political agenda, because they're grabbing hold of something masculine and saying, this is ours because we are your equals. And this is a second prong to an overall consumer movement, because it's about in the same time, the 50s, 60s, and 70s, that we start seeing a shift in the marketing demographic where women are choosing pink for girls and choosing blue for boys. There is no actual push by society to condition that. It is a choice that is being made by the free market, which is why this pink for girls thing is quite a recent phenomenon and really not in keeping in any way with our species' history at all. And I just want to take you back a moment here because I find something particularly amusing here. Females, and feminists in particular, have appropriated the colour pink from boys. They're claiming and pushing to be the equals of men, yet they don't reach for the male colour of red. They reach down and across for the boy's colour pink, which segues us quite nicely into the topic of the word girl, and how feminists have also chosen to appropriate that word. But first we're going to look at the etymology of the words man and woman, because it's quite amusing. Because for a large part of our history, the term man has simply been a word used to refer to an adult human of both genders. And then that word man would be amended with other words to denote an adult male or an adult female. So an adult male would be referred to as a Weremann, and the adult female would be referred to as a Wifmann. And then we get on to the very interesting topic of girl and boy. Because in the same way that the term man was used to denote simply an adult human, the term girl was originally a genderless term for any child of our species, be they male or female. And then we had the term boy, which was actually used to denote a male servant, which is why not all that long ago it was not uncommon for black males in America to be referred to as boy. And why, even to this day, if you have a waitering staff in France, you will hear him referred to as garçon. Garçon, of course, being the French translation for boy. And the thing that I find amusing is that women have once again reached down and across. They've reached down and across and appropriated the term girl to mean female. So we have this amusing feminist push where they are referring to men using the term for an adult and constantly referring to themselves by the term girl, which actually means child, despite the fact that they are adults. And then we refer to all male children as boy, implying that they are all some sort of servant or slave class. Just an interesting thing to note. Anyway, back on track.
And I'm tired of gender roles that restrict a child's ability to grow into who they are. So why don't we change it? Why don't we stop feeding into this archaic way of thinking and open our minds?
While I agree that there are some social constructs around the idea of gender that do need to be looked at and reevaluated, we also need to accept that there are certain areas of society built around gender constructs that are part of our biology, and you will not get rid of those anytime soon, because sexual dimorphism is a thing.
Whoever said a thought couldn't change the world is sorely mistaken.
Yeah, look at the impact all of those Twitter hashtags had on the oh, wait.
So I know I don't normally make serious videos like this,
and I think you should refrain from doing so in the future.
But every so often there's something that, I just need to talk about because it's important.
And every so often there's just something that I need to talk about because someone's being an idiot.
So, if you stuck with me this long, thank you for watching.
Aw, thank you. I don't know how I make it through these videos either.
And I'm sorry I'm not sorry.
Oh, well, fuck you then.